Dr. Ron Paul, who is running for president of the United States right now in the Republican Party, is alluding to the fact that inflation is much higher. There is a report out right now from the American Institute for Economic Research that shows that the everyday prices, not the prices of houses and furniture and appliances and cars and computers, but instead the prices of food and gasoline and childcare and prescription drugs and phone bills and television service, all in household products, things that you buy each and every day. The American Institute of Economic Research has reported that those prices are up over 8% over the last year. And so the real inflation rate, not determined by the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, which, currently is saying somewhere around 3%, but instead it's closer to 8% when you really get down to the basic prices of things. For example, food is up 3.5%. Prescription drugs are up 4.2%. Tobacco is up 3.4%. Motor fuel and transportation costs are up 21% from a year ago today. So we are seeing increases in the prices of things, and that, of course, is called inflation. But inflation, the idea that inflation is represented by an increase in prices is really just a symptom, because inflation itself is what it really is an increase in the money supply. So when the money supply actually goes up, well, then there's more money. And so then that money is chasing fewer goods, and therefore the prices of things go up. So that is inflation, the increase in the money supply. And Dr. Paul is alluding to that in this comment to Ben Bernanke. Now, we're going to let Ben Bernanke comment in just a minute. But, Jennifer, I have to make a comment here that, we have been hearing people over and over again who are pointing out that no one is talking about the Fed. And it makes me want to put my head through a wall, because we have running for the president of the United States a man who has been talking about the Federal Reserve for I don't know how long. A new report was released showing that China is number 2 as far as holders of our $15.5 trillion national debt. China's number 2. Who's number 1? Who is number 1? Number 1 is the Federal Reserve and other government agencies, as they say, which, by the way, the Federal Reserve is as Federal Express, so it's not really a government agency. It really has no accountability, and it really answers to no one when you really boil it all down. But the Federal Reserve is number 1 in holding of our national debt. And we were listening the other day to a broadcast of somebody who was promoting Santorum, or they were promoting Mitt Romney, or whatever they're promoting, and they were saying, why doesn't anybody ever talk about the Fed? They always talk about China, but they never talk about the Fed.
That's right. I remember that. We were in the car just a few days ago, and I almost had to pull over to the side of the road and just calm down for a minute, because there's a person running for president who even wrote a book. He wrote a book about the Fed. What was it called? Something like End the Fed, I think is what it was, right? Yes, exactly. All these conservatives are all of a sudden saying, oh, the Federal Reserve, we've got to do something. Well, you've got a guy running for office who has written a book called End the Fed. He actually is the only one who is taking on the Federal Reserve. They are a leech. They are a fraud. They are sucking money from the American taxpayer, and they are funding wars. Now, this is what I don't get. I've got to really break this down for a minute and help you understand. Because on one hand, this radio broadcaster, who is a conservative, he was saying how, well, no one ever talks about the Fed. They talk about China, but they never talk about the Fed. And then out of the other side of his mouth, he was saying, we've got to get Santorum in. We've got to get somebody like Romney in. Because why? Because we've got to go continue these wars. Now, friends, this is the definition of psychosis. This is how you know that you have entered the Twilight Zone. How do you know? Because all of a sudden, you make no sense. How does America fund its wars? China, the Federal Reserve. You want to drop bombs on countries, but you don't want to pay for them. So we have to borrow the money. China,
and the Federal Reserve. That's where we get our money to fund wars. So here's the deal. If you want to end the Federal Reserve, you can't carpet bomb nations. And if you want to carpet bomb nations, you've got to have a piggy bank like the Federal Reserve. And that's one of the things that I don't understand. Why the conservative movement is now waking up and scratching their heads and saying, this Federal Reserve, we've got to end it. And they're trying to pin it on Obama somehow, as if Obama created the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve's been here since 1913. It is a leech on the economy. Every single president has used it. Every single bit of the Congress has used it. And now the conservative movement says, we've got to end the Fed. Well, if you're going to end the Fed, you have to end your wars. So you can't vote for Santorum and then say, let's end the Fed. Because he's not going to end the Fed. He didn't write a book called End the Fed. He promoted the bailouts, for goodness sake. Romney is not going to end the Fed. He loves the Fed. Herman Cain, remember Herman Cain? The 999, remember that guy? He was formerly on the Federal Reserve Board. He wasn't going to end the Fed. None of these bozos are going to end the Fed. There's only one guy up there who says, let's end the Fed. And you know what? He's logical enough to say, if you end the Fed, you cannot continue to have your military bases in over 900 countries. Because who are you going to borrow money from? China? So the point is these conservatives who want to continue these wars and bomb Iran, and then they also talk about how bad the Fed is, they ain't got a clue. Because they don't understand who funds the wars. So here's the deal. You want to bomb countries? You want to continue wars? You want to continue these unconstitutional wars that have not been declared since World War II? You want to continue these? You need the Fed. You let the Fed continue to suck the blood dry from you, and that's fine. But you can't have the wars and not have the Fed. That's the whole point. The Fed and central banking love wars. That's what they start. The War of 1812. Go back. It was the end of the charter for the Second Bank of the United States. That's how it got started. Or the First Bank of the United States. That's how it got started. And we look at the 1913. The Federal Reserve is born. What do you know? World War I, 1914. The next year, by the time 1917, 1918 rolls around, we're in the middle of the war. This is nothing new. And the fact that we have a person who's running for president who is being told, he is being totally 100% logical here. And people say, well, I love the fact that he wants to end the Fed, but he doesn't want to bomb countries. Well, you can't have both. You cannot have both. I mean, that's the whole point. Well, I like Ron Paul on his money stuff, but his foreign policy is terrible. Well, that doesn't make any sense because you can't have his economy. You can't have his economic principles without his foreign policy principles. They go hand in hand. It makes me, Jennifer, it makes me want to put my head through that glass window over there because it might feel good compared to what I have to put up with all of these commentators who don't get it. They just don't understand economics.
Please don't do that.
Okay.
I would be sad.
Okay. I got to tell you, it's tempting. It's right there. I'm looking at it. That pretty window needs my head right through it. I mean, it would feel really good at this point.
But, back to what you were saying about the Federal Reserve and wars, you have to think about this logically, is that if you're a business owner and you own a bank, who would you rather have as a customer? Would you rather have Sally Joe, just a person by herself, or would you rather have a big business owner in the town? You'd rather have the big business owner in the town. You get more business. If you're a bigger bank, would you rather have a big corporation as your customer, or would you rather have the United States government as your customer? There's trillions of dollars pumping through that system.
Absolutely.
I would rather have the government as a customer. And what do you want to do? You want to loan that customer as much money as you can because you get paid interest on that. What is the incentive there? The Federal Reserve, who's owned by a group of banks.
Right. I mean, all these banks, the Goldman Sachs, the JP Morgans, all these guys own interest in the Federal Reserve. And of course, they want what? They want the government to borrow money, right?
And so the best way to do that is a war.
Get them entangled in a war.
Wars are expensive. I mean, we were watching something the other day about the war in Afghanistan. Our military is paying $10,000 for a well to be dug that should cost around, I think they said around $500.
Yeah, something in that range. But, we're over there and the money's, being pumped out by the central bank. And so we're able to fund these things and the taxpayer's on the hook. And look, in 1913, when the Federal Reserve came into existence in the first place, what did they want? You don't get a central bank in your country unless you have a taxing authority. And so what was born in 1913? The Federal Reserve. What else was born in 1913? The income tax. Why do they want the income tax? Because the central bank wants to know that they can the Washington can rip the money out of your check and give it to them in the event that something goes wrong. And so that's exactly what the United States did. That's exactly what happened back in Britain. If you go back and study the Bank of England, their bank came around the same time that their income tax came around. So these central banks need an income tax to guarantee that they're going to loan the money and they're going to get paid back. Because these guys aren't working altruistically. They are not working for the benefit of the government. They're working for the benefit of themselves. And they set their own interest rates. How about that? What kind of deal is that? You get to set your own interest rates. Every time you see Ben Bernanke walk out and say, well, we're going to set interest rate targets at, 1.5%. They're making up their own profits. They literally make it up. So anyway, this guy who was going on about how he couldn't understand why no one was talking about the Fed, and it's almost as if there's a media blackout. We've talked about this before. Ron Paul has been saying this stuff for I don't know how long. He's been beating the dead horse, and few people are listening.
I know you're about to let Ben Bernanke reply there to Ron Paul, and it's funny, his first response is kind of a laughter, saying, all right, Congressman, great to see you again, because he knows he's going to talk about the actions of the Fed every single time. It's almost laughable now, I guess, in the eyes of Bernanke, because Ron Paul has been talking about this for so long.
Right. So we have an empire that's in decline. We have wars that are going on everywhere, and we want Santorum. Why? Why does the American public want Santorum? Because he'll stop the gays. What? Our country is in perpetual decline, right? The Fed is sucking us dry. And you want to attack the gays, right? That's the big deal. That's the real big deal. And we got to get Romney in. Why? Well, because he can beat Obama. At this point, you want to be honest, Jennifer? To be completely honest with these people. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I will take Obama for another 4 years than I would Romney in a heartbeat. You know why? Not because I like Obama. Are you kidding me? I am a Republican to the best of my knowledge, right? If they have to categorize me, I want limited government. I want the government out of my business, right? They're just all up in my business, in my bedroom, telling me what I can do, what I can't do, telling me what I can put in my body, telling me what I can't put in my body, telling me that I got to have their hands down my pants when I walk into the airport, telling me that they need to stick me through a naked body scanner, telling me that I can't have this in my house, telling me I can't have. They are too big. I want less of them. That's the solution. And when Reagan came into office, he said, government is not the solution, it's the problem. Well, that sounds real nice until you figured out he tripled the national debt, right? Ronald Reagan, he was a great conservative. Holy cow, he tripled the national debt. How is that a conservative principle? Right? So, conservative Republican, I don't know. All I know is I want the government out of my business. You can call me R, you can call me an elephant, you can call me a donkey. I don't care. I just want the government out of my business. I want them out of my business. I don't want them telling me what marriage is. I don't want them telling me what I can do with my body. I don't want them telling me what I should have to do. I don't want them telling me anything. I want them to protect my borders and provide basic services and get the heck out of my way. That's what I want.